In this episode, we talk about the 21st Animal Census 2024. We also talk about Enforcement Directorate's investigation into its probe into the illegal sale of tickets for concerts by British rock band Coldplay and singer and actor Diljit Dosanjh. But first, we talk about India and China's border standoff. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On 21st October, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said that after a 4.5-year-long standoff between India and China, New Delhi and Beijing have finally agreed on a disengagement plan on the line of actual control where 50 to 60,000 troops have been stationed on both the sides. After multiple diplomatic and military negotiations at a number of forums, the two nations have made a decision regarding the issue. Misri said, quote, "Agreement has been arrived at on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control LAC in the India-China border areas, leading to disengagement and a resolution of the issues that had arisen in these areas in 2020, and we will be taking the next steps on this." Unquote. To understand what this means for India and China's bilateral relations and future, we have Indian Express's Diplomatic Affairs editor Shubhajit Roy joining us. Shubhajit, can you tell us what led to this sudden decision by both the countries?
Well, in the last few months, there was sort of negotiations that were going on. Obviously, the negotiations have been going on for the last 2 years. The border standoff started in April, May 2020. And till September 2022, the Indian and Chinese diplomatic and military negotiators were able to resolve, to some extent, the face-off situation in 4 or 5 areas. But there were 2 areas which predated this particular border standoff, and they were in Depsang and Demchok in eastern Ladakh. And those were tricky because the Chinese side never wanted to acknowledge the fact that they are sort of part of this particular border standoff. And these were referred to as legacy issues, essentially something that has happened pre-April, May 2020. So essentially what had happened was Indian patrolling parties, Indian troops, were not able to go to some of these patrolling points at the LAC, at the line of actual control, which is the India-China border. And the Chinese were blocking those patrolling parties. So what happened was the Indian side and the Chinese side were negotiating to reopen those patrolling routes. And India was insistent for the last 2 years. The momentum in the negotiations really picked up in the last few months, as we understand. And it really, in the last few weeks, the negotiators were able to arrive at an agreement. As Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said that, the two sides have reached an agreement on the patrolling arrangements. So that was how this particular, agreement was arrived at.
And if we go back a little, why did this entire standoff happen to begin with back in 2020?
Yeah, that's a great question, Niharika. So, obviously the Chinese motivation is not known very accurately, but the analysis has been that the Chinese have been trying to sort of get their troops along the line of actual control. And the Indian side has also been trying to project strength at the line of actual control in the last several years. And the Indian infrastructure leading up to the line of actual controls have considerably improved in the last 10-15 years. And because of that, India is able to patrol much more effectively, much more regularly at the LAC, which may not have been the case before. The Chinese were already doing it. So the face-offs became more frequent, and the Chinese wanted to now project strength. So in the month of April 2020, the Chinese actually moved a lot of troops at the line of actual control. At that point of time, the impression or the information that was conveyed by the Chinese PLA, which is the their army to the Indian forces was that it was a routine exercise by the Chinese. But as it turned out that the buildup was much higher than what a routine exercise would entail. And these troops, sort of after the exercises, never left. In fact, they stayed put, and in fact, they were at some points at very close proximity with their line of actual control. And that's where the border standoff began in early April of 2020 and early May of 2020, which led to essentially there were some clashes which are very bloody in June 2020.
Right. And what did India's Army Chief General have to say about this development, and what was China's stand on the same?
Well, the Army Chief, he essentially sort of said that he underlined Army Chief General Upendra Dwivedi in his first remarks after the Patrolling Pact was announced by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, essentially underlined the need for the Indian Army and the Chinese PLA to first restore trust in each other by not creeping into the buffer zones and go back to the status quo of April 2020, which is before the Chinese incursions in eastern Ladakh led to a military standoff, and then look at disengagement, de-escalation, and normal management of the line of actual control. So that was a very, very important sort of a statement coming from the Army Chief. And this, by the way, happened in the same day as China confirming the sort of border pact. Although they didn't mention the border pact, they just said that the two sides have reached a solution on the relevant matters, which China views positively. And it did not, however, mention the patrolling arrangement. So on Saturday morning, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson essentially talked about the disengagement process that's going on right now. And she said that, in accordance with the resolutions that China and India reached recently on issues concerning the border area, the Chinese and Indian frontier troops are engaged in relevant work, which is going smoothly at the moment. So this is the first Chinese confirmation of the disengagement in process in Depsang and Demchok.
Right. And Shubhajit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping, for the first time in 5 years, held a bilateral meeting. So can you tell us what happened in that meeting and what all decisions were agreed upon?
After this particular border pact was announced and the two sides confirmed that the sort of disengagement they will take place, the two sides started, preparing. This paved the way for a bilateral meeting between the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping. And that's what happened on the sidelines of the BRICS Leaders Summit in Kazan, which is in Russia. And the two leaders were there, so they had a scheduled bilateral meeting in which essentially they welcomed this particular border pact. And the Indian side said that, the two sides will implement and follow up on this particular agreement and go ahead with the disengagement. And that is how the relationship can get back to normalcy. So the Chinese side, however, has a different tone, different emphasis in their statement. They essentially say that, want a better relationship and move towards a better relationship in the next few days, in the next few weeks and months and years. And that's been their sort of emphasis all this while in the last 4.5 years as well, since the border standoff, essentially saying that the border standoff should not impact the overall bilateral relations. Whereas India continues to insist that unless the border situation is resolved, border standoff is resolved, there cannot be business as usual in the bilateral relations. Now we have to see how it develops from here on.
Right. And what is the patrolling agreement that has been finalized between the two nations?
So the patrolling agreement is about these 2 points, Depsang and Demchok only. And there are, the Indian troops not able to access some of the patrolling points and were being blocked by the Chinese troops. These are patrolling points numbered 10 to 13 in Depsang. And in Demchok, there is a patrolling point, there are a couple of patrolling points, which also the Indian side was not able to access. So now with this agreement, what happens is both sides can patrol, and Indian troops can patrol like it used to patrol before April of 2020. And right now, what is happening is both sides are removing the temporary structures that were set up at the LOC in these 2 points, which would be tents and vehicles and storage areas, weapon, ammunition. They're removing them since Tuesday. And it is expected to be completed by 28th or 29th, which is early next week. And then once this disengagement, once these structures are removed, then patrolling can begin by end of the month or early next month. And this will be the first time that the troops will be able to patrol till the patrolling points along the LAC in 4.5 years.
Right. And there is also this caution that has been coming up with regards to the agreement. So can you tell us what is that about?
So essentially, because the Chinese side was not mentioning the border pact at all, the Indian side sort of flagged its concern, a caution, and that was conveyed by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar at the BRICS Outreach Summit, where Chinese President Xi Jinping was also present, where he essentially said that agreements once agreed upon must be respected, essentially hinting at the two governments must adhere to the patrolling agreement that has been agreed upon. And the Indian side doesn't want a repeat of another face-off, another clash like it happened in Galwan.
And Shubhajit, how do we see the Indo-China relations going forward? Will the status quo be reinstated in its true sense, or are there still certain concerns that need to be put to rest?
It will take a while before the entire process of disengagement first and then de-escalation and finally the induction of troops take place. Because, you have to remember these are about 50,000 to 60,000 troops on each side of the border, and put together it is more than 1 lakh troops on both sides of the border. You also have to think of the massive equipment, tanks, and all the weapons and ammunition that have been, and storage areas that have been created, and they have been moved there, deployed there on both sides. So to move all of them, it will take a lot of time from both sides. So the Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, as he pointed out, that this is a path to the normalcy. And if both sides are able to trust each other, verify each other's sort of deployments and move back the troops, and then it would lead to a normalization of the relationship. And as of now, this is just the beginning of that entire process.
And next we talk about India's livestock census. On 24th October, Rajiv Ranjan Singh, the Union Minister of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying, launched the 21st livestock census in New Delhi. Nearly 87,000 enumerators will be collecting the data for the 21st livestock census that will be held between October 2024 and February 2025. To learn more about the census and why it is necessary, we have Indian Express's Harikishan Sharma joining us. Harikishan, can you begin by telling us what is a livestock census?
So basically, like the population census, the livestock census is a head count exercise to assess the number of animals, particularly the domesticated animals, poultry and stray animals in the country. It is conducted every 5 years, while regular census, the population census is conducted at every 10 years. It is conducted at every 5 years. During this exercise, information regarding species, breed, age, sex, and ownership of the animals is gathered. This is a quite old exercise. It began in 1919. Since then, 20 livestock censuses have been conducted in the country. The latest livestock census was held in 2019. And this is, the 21st livestock census, which has already begun 2 days back. And it will continue till February 2025. And then the results will come out. And the livestock census is really a mammoth exercise because around 87,000 enumerators will visit each and every household, enterprises, non-household enterprises, institutions like Gaushala, dairy farms, poultry farms, veterinary colleges, and defense establishments to gather information about livestock. And, it will cover around 30 crore households in the country. And once the data is collected, it will be processed and the result will be out, say, 1 year from now or 1.5 years from now.
Right. And which all animals are included within the records of the animal census?
So according to Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, which is the nodal department for conducting this livestock census, 16 species of animals and birds are being counted in this round of census. And these species are cattle, buffaloes, mithun, yak, sheep, goat, pig, camel, horse, ponies, mule, donkey, dog, rabbit, and elephant. And beside the head count of poultry birds like fowl, chicken, turkey, geese, quail, ostrich, and emu are also counted. And for the first time, they're also counting the number of pastoral animals and information about pastoral communities in the 21st livestock census. And also, they would count the number of stray animals, particularly stray cattle and stray dogs. So this is what they are counting in 21st livestock census.
But Harikishan, can you tell us why is it held? What is the objective behind doing an animal census?
So, the livestock sector is very important for the rural communities because it provides them livelihood and employment to the very poor state of the society. Say roughly 8 crore families are dependent on livestock sector. So in that sense, it is a very crucial sector for our economy. In terms of numbers, it contributes around 4.7% to our gross value added in the economy. And if we take the agriculture and allied sector separately, then the contribution of the livestock sector is more than 30% in that sector. So it is a very crucial sector for poor, for rural areas. And when this census is conducted, then these figures are used to estimate gross value added figures and also to estimate the GDP numbers. Because based on these numbers, say number of cattle, they calculate the productivity and production of the livestock sector. So this is the significance in terms of, say, employment, in terms of economy, but also, United Nations has declared sustainable development goals, and these goals has to be achieved by end of this decade. So the goal number 2, zero hunger, and the target 2.5, the target is maintaining genetic diversity in food and nutrition. And the indicator 2.5.2, that is the percentage of local livestock breed that are at risk of extinction, are related to the livestock sector. So in achieving those goals, SDG goals, and meeting those targets, this livestock census is, very important.
Right. And Harikishan, we have been conducting this animal census since 1919, as you said. So how will the 21st animal census that is now happening going to be different from all the ones that came before it?
So this census is different in many ways, but I would tell you 3 things which makes it different from the previous exercises. So the first is, for the first time, they are gathering information about the pastoral communities, because in the earlier censuses, this figure was not available. So for the first time, you will have information about the households who are engaged in pastoral activities. So there's a new question has been added to the schedule of the census, and this question is whether the household belongs to pastoral community. So that is one. And the second is, for the first time, they are gathering information about gender of the stray animals. If there are, stray cattle, then which gender they belong to most, whether they are cows or bulls. So the census will tell you the gender-wise information on stray cattle also. It will also give you a gender-wise breakup of data of stray dogs. And the third is, this census is conducted in a digital environment. It is conducted through digital means. So the data will be collected through mobile applications, and it will be processed digitally. Then the result will be announced. So there's a software developed for this census exercise. So in that sense also is different from the earlier censuses, which were largely conducted manually. So this is the first time that they are using mobile application and will also capture latitude and longitude of the data collected from different locations.
Right. And can you tell us a little bit about the findings of the 2019 census?
So the last census, the 20th livestock census, was conducted in 2019, and it shows that livestock population was 535 million, which comprises 192 million cattle. That is the largest animal group in the country, followed by goats, 148 million, then buffaloes, 109 million, sheep, 74 million, pigs, 9 million, and rest were the other animals. And it also gives you a geographical and historical perspective, like where is the growth taking place or decline taking place in the livestock population. And, there's also one more thing about the livestock census, that is the breed survey. Because with the census, they also conduct breed survey. So within a species, say there might be several breeds of the cattle. So they also collect information about breeds, indigenous breeds as well as exotic breeds. So there are 219 breeds of these 16 species which are being counted in this census. And this is very important from the perspective of breed upgradation, which is very essential for increasing our productivity and production.
And Harikishan, if we talk about this animal census, how do we see it helping the livestock rearers and farmers of India?
So, this exercise is a macro level exercise. It gives you a macro picture of a country, tells you what kind of breeds we do have largely, and where are the areas they need intervention from the government. If they want to promote certain breeds, they can design their policies. And ultimately, these policies and programs would help livestock rearers. So this data gives a picture of the livestock sector. And with those latest numbers and latest figures, the government decides its policies. Also, the private sector also take a view of that information, deciding its investment. So in that way, it eventually helps the cattle rearer also.
And in the end, we talk about the Diljit Dosanjh and Coldplay concerts happening across India. On Saturday, the Enforcement Directorate said that it has conducted searches across 5 states in connection with its probe into the illegal sale of tickets for concerts by British rock band Coldplay and actor and singer Diljit Dosanjh. Saying that it has initiated an investigation under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act (PMLA), the Enforcement Directorate said searches were undertaken on Friday at more than 13 locations in Delhi, Mumbai, Jaipur, Bengaluru and Chandigarh. The ED said in a statement, and I quote, "This action was aimed to investigate the illegal sale of tickets and the financial networks supporting these scams and to trace the proceeds of crime generated from such illegal activities." It further added, quote, "Several incriminating materials such as mobile phones, laptops, SIM cards, etc. used in the scam was seized." Unquote. While the Illuminati concert by Diljit Dosanjh was held over the weekend on October 26th and 27th at the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in Delhi, Coldplay's Music of the Spheres World Tour concert is scheduled to be held in January 2025 at Navi Mumbai. Citing numerous reports of people being deceived or cheated through fraudulent ticket sales, the ED said that some were sold fake tickets while the others were charged exorbitant amounts for legitimate ones. The statement said that multiple FIRs have been filed in various states across the country, including the FIR filed by Book My Show against several suspects believed to be exploiting concert goers. The FIR has alleged that these individuals engaged in selling counterfeit tickets and drastically increasing the prices, taking advantage of the high demand for these concerts. The statement also mentioned that official ticketing partners Book My Show and Zomato Live had reported that tickets were sold out in just few minutes on their platforms, which ultimately led to black marketing at exorbitant prices. The ED's searches and investigations revealed information regarding multiple individuals known for providing such tickets, including fake tickets through social media using Instagram, WhatsApp, and Telegram, it said, adding that further investigation was underway. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.